Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. It's another week of college football on the horizon. Week 3 is on the way. Week 2 is coming on. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about week 2 because it was a crazy week, and I don't think things really kind of got themselves knocked into the heads of people. Like Kansas State is 1-2. Like they lost to Army, which is insane to me. Like the Army team that just lost to Tarleton State beat Kansas State, lost to Iowa State. Speaking of Iowa State, Iowa State was able to capture the Cy-Hawk Trophy yet again. Just good old late Iowa State magic, to be quite honest with you. Honestly, to be quite honest with you, like that offense for Iowa, Mark Gronowski, he's a terrific quarterback that came over from the FCS in South Dakota State. Terrific quarterback when he's used correctly. Unfortunately, Iowa just has, I don't know what it is with Kirk Ferentz and co, that Iowa just had like zero offense for like at least 3.5 quarters of this game. So they got a TD drive late. But yeah, Iowa State is the first 3-0 team in college football, which is crazy to me. Crazy stuff. The rest of the Big 12 didn't really fare too well. Like Arizona State, had a horrible night. Sam Levitt had a horrible night. Yeah, there was some plays made, but ultimately Blake Shapen and the Mississippi State Bulldogs got a big win late, big time touchdown pass from Shapen late to one of his wide receivers, 58 yards. Boom, ball game. Mississippi State, got a huge win, which is very, very surprising. You didn't expect a team like Mississippi State to do that. Speaking of teams you just don't expect, are we sitting on the cusp of 2007 once again? Because USF just did it again. They beat Florida in a game where, Florida had like absolutely no offense to speak of, like none. Like DJ Lagway is just not him. Billy Napier is on the hot seat. Can Florida even bounce back against LSU? Garrett Nussmeier and company are coming to play. And you know it's LSU, so it's a night game. It's going to be a night game. But can Florida, bounce back? The question is can they do that with the schedule that they have? The schedule that they have is just going to get tougher and tougher and tougher. And there's just nothing anybody can do about it. Nothing. So, the wild thing, Kevin Jennings and SMU, they went off TJ Harden, absolutely good back, really good back. SMU's offense is loaded. But ultimately, Baylor won for the 14th consecutive time. And guess who was the beneficiary of that? The CW. And we'll talk a little bit more about the CW in a second, as they are the beneficiaries of a big-time game this week as well. So CW got a good gem. Baylor SMU went to overtime. Sawyer Robertson, who's been around for a while too. I'm sitting here like, Blake Shapen still in college? Yes, he is. Sawyer Robertson still in college? Yes, he is. They've been around. And yet Baylor, the offense, was kind of struggling for a little bit. SMU was getting their punches in, but ultimately Baylor bounced back, and got the win in overtime. And it was good enough. Same thing with Ole Miss. Their offense is pretty good when they can be. Austin Simmons looked rough in that first half against Kentucky. But, Kentucky has Zach Calzada on offense. That's not going to be a recipe for success. I'm sorry. It's just not. Kentucky tried their best, but ultimately their best wasn't good enough. Same thing with – well, actually, no, never mind. Oklahoma State got absolutely throttled by Noah Whittington, Dante Moore, and that Oregon Ducks offense just smacked around. Mike Gundy is probably tearing off his hair right now. Oklahoma State is just not in a good place at this moment. Missouri, Kansas, a lot of people want a game day to go to that game. But again, that game was on ESPN2, and the opportunities are going to present themselves over the next couple of weeks for Missouri. Hint, hint. Not this Saturday, but maybe next Saturday. South Carolina. Missouri fans, that could be big for you. Just got to take care of business like you did against Kansas. Because it was back and forth in that game as well for quite a minute, and yet Missouri was able to get the W. Luther Burden's gone. So Missouri had to get a lot of interesting new pieces, and they were able to do just enough in this game between them and Kansas to get that win. There's a couple others, like Clemson just looked horrible for a half against Troy. They beefed up in the second half, but at the same time, honestly, Troy just got their foot off the pedal. It's the same thing that always happens, in the near G5 upset. The foot got off the pedal, and then boom, that's the game. Clemson wins. So tough sell. This week, A&M, Notre Dame, going to be big. Going to be a big one. CJ Kane, this A&M team does not bring fear in anybody's eyes, I don't think. And this Notre Dame team, after losing to Miami, do they bring fear? Not sure. A&M struggled a little bit against Utah State too, but Marcel Reed, was able to get what was needed out of him and get it done. And A&M, hasn't really been tested too crazily so far, beating Utah State, UTSA, but how things are. It's going to be a good one. Notre Dame is ranked 8th, despite not having even a win. Jeremiah Love has to get going, though, I think, CJ Carr, he was able to do, something, but it wasn't good enough against Miami. I don't know if something is going to cut it against A&M. So both these teams already have something to lose, If they lose this game, A&M, already trying to fight off the reputation that they have, of which, can they even recover from that reputation, because they have a long season ahead. Arch Manning did fine this week. Who's asking? Not gonna get into crazy details. LSU kind of struggled a little bit, but again, Florida comes to town. And Florida with DJ Lagway, I don't see it. Definitely see a pretty good defensive game, which Louisiana Tech was able to surprisingly give LSU, keeping them limited to under 30 points. Could be interesting. There's Illinois, who with Luke Altmaier is top 10, which I failed to put in the ticker. I don't feel like doing that. They beat the brakes off of Duke, which I kind of expected. It's like now the big time showdown could be Indiana, Illinois in a couple weeks. That is insane for me to even utter out of my mouth right now. And again, the CW, they're going to get another gem. Carson Beck and the Miami Hurricanes taking on USF. USF ranked number 18, Miami ranked number 5. Get another top 25 matchup on the CW. It's going to be interesting. It'll be very, very intriguing. And then, Gunnar Stockton at the Georgia Bulldogs against Joey Aguilar. Yes, that Joey Aguilar, who has played magnificent so far. Pretty good football from Aguilar so far. Georgia, Tennessee, a top 15 SEC matchup. Game day will be there. It's going to be a beautiful game. We've already got the polls up for the big-time matchups, the 3 ranked matchups this week. Man, let me tell you. This is a make-it-or-break-it type game early for Georgia. A lot of people think Georgia, can do some damage this year. A lot of people think Tennessee now can do some damage this year. Tennessee didn't really show that they had much of a defense. They had it in spades, but it's not completely there. against Syracuse or whatever, because Syracuse still has a pretty good offense despite losing a lot of pieces. They didn't really show me. Tennessee did not show me. He did not show me the money. Georgia, on the other hand, a little bit easier of a time. A lot of rain-delayed games this past weekend too, which is insane. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this one is going to be a top 15 matchup. This is going to shake up the foundation. With 11 SEC teams in the top 25, something's got to give. These big-time matchups early on in the season in probably the toughest conference in America, is just going to be – and I know people are going to be like, well, big boy, I don't think that's the case, but whatever. But I'd say hold on. Let me just state my case for a second. Again, there are 11 teams ranked. Should there be 11 SEC teams ranked? Absolutely not. But they're ranked anyway. There's 11 SEC teams ranked anyway. Oh, forgot about one of them. Yeah, John Mateer in Oklahoma. My God, I told y'all John Mateer was, something, yeah, I did say, a little bit of a caveat. I did say a little bit of a caveat that last year was last year, but he's still a very talented player, and he still put up monster numbers over, 3 touchdowns, hat-trick TDs, and I mean, Michigan, Underwood just could not get anything going. I mean, Oklahoma's defense looks intriguingly good, which is insane for me to say. I don't want to say that, but hey, Brett Venables, you might finally have something. You might finally have a defense, worthy of your Oklahoma tenure so far. Because honestly, the last 10 years or so, Oklahoma's defense has just been pretty bad. But, who knows? But yeah, week 2, crazy. 4 top 25 teams lost. I told you there were going to be upsets, anyway. I told y'all there were going to be some upsets. I don't think I expected some of these at all, I don't think I expected Clemson to look the way they did. Can they even keep up with Georgia Tech in a couple weeks? Because that Georgia Tech offense is crazy if I hate King. I don't know, man. But what I will do is get out y'all's hair and go rest up because I feel like I need another day's rest to fully recover from being a sick boy, so I'm going to rest up. I'm going to talk the NFL tomorrow. Crazy week 1 of NFL football. Another crazy weekend of college football on the way. Unfortunately, this week I probably will not be inside. This week we ended up not having, stuff on Saturday, so I ended up getting to watch all the craziness from the comfort of my bed, but not this week, probably. So I'm going to get all out y'all's hair. I'll see y'all tomorrow.